Hello, and welcome to this episode of In Conversation. My name's Dr. Karl Devincenzi. I'm joined today by Dr. Katherine Lloyd-Clark. Hi, Katherine. How are you doing?
Hi, Karl. I'm really well.
Fantastic. Um, we're doing this episode today in light of the recently announced changes by UCAS to the teacher references, and we're going to dedicate the episode to reviewing those references. So, Katherine, I guess a good point to start here is to talk about what those changes are.
Yes, absolutely, Karl. So UCAS has announced that they are going to be changing the format of the teacher reference from 2024 entry. The changes will come into play for the next full admission cycle that we're working towards. And UCAS is basically moving from the existing situation where the reference is a relatively long piece of continuous text to a situation where the reference will be broken down into three separate questions. And those questions basically ask for, first of all, a general description of the school or college or UCAS centre. That's the first one. And then the second one asks for any extenuating circumstances or anything particular to that candidate's experience that needs to be added. And then the third question, Karl, is really any other information that is specific to the applicant or relevant to the course that the student is applying for. So the third question is the one that's caused most debate because it isn't as specific as the other two. And some universities have given some quite clear direction that they want to see some real commentary on academic potential in that section. And other universities are much more low key about that and have said that they're quite happy to see that section left blank if there isn't anything additional that the centre wants to add. That's the outline really of what's changing, Karl. I hope that's helpful for everyone.
That's great. So those are the changes, broadly speaking, across the sector. I guess the question here now is for the University of Exeter, what role does the teacher reference play in an applicant in an applicant's sort of application?
Yes, and I mean, this takes us to the heart, I think, of why UCAS have introduced these changes, really, Karl, because I think many universities over a long period of time, really, have used the reference as a kind of general bit of background information, but not used them terribly actively in the selection process. Now, of course, this does vary enormously, and there are, other universities out there, the University of Cambridge has been particularly vocal on this, that do want to use reference information as part of their holistic assessment of an application overall. But at Exeter, we haven't used the reference selectively for a long period of time. We do read them. We do find that on occasion there's a nugget of information there that helps us, perhaps means that we don't have to contact the applicant separately for some further information because it's already covered off in the teacher reference. And of course, when teachers verify that the qualification information that's been included on an application is correct, that also helps us, and we don't then have to reach out separately to the applicant for confirmation or a transcript. But generally speaking, if something is missing from an application, we will ask for it. We will never turn an applicant down on the basis of a reference. And at the same time, we won't really use them actively to sort of thought or filter or discriminate between candidates in a selective sense. So the changes that UCAS is making from our point of view are quite positive, really, Karl, because I think they bring into better alignment the effort that we're asking for from schools and colleges. We're aware really that references have been quite a big project for most schools and colleges. Pulling them together is a big piece of work, and often schools have involved each individual subject teacher to provide a short paragraph or a few lines, and then maybe a pastoral tutor or a head of sixth form has added a section as well, and there's been a real school and college effort to pull them together, and actually perhaps that effort in the end was a little bit disproportionate to how the references were actually used in the majority of institutions, and certainly for Exeter. They're helpful in a general background sense, but if something is really important and we don't have it in the application, we will ask for it. And we really don't feel that schools and colleges need to spend perhaps quite as much time and energy as they have done before on those references.
And as you've alluded to, Catherine, obviously there is no standardized approach across the sector, so different universities will handle this in very different ways.
They will, but I do feel perhaps that the number of institutions that are really using the reference selectively will be relatively modest. And they're quite well publicised names. And I think in the majority of cases, in order to be really fair to applicants coming from a very wide variety of different contexts, and of course not just in the UK, but all over the world, um, we have to be relatively flexible about what goes into references currently and how they're used, because there isn't really a common approach from all the different sending school or college centres all over the globe. So personally, I think these changes are welcome and will hopefully save schools and colleges some work in what is a very busy process otherwise.
Thank you. Now, Catherine, you mentioned that one of the areas that UCAS has built into the new structure is this the extenuating circumstances section. And I wonder whether you'd be able to talk us through how the University of Exeter handles extenuating circumstances and what the best way to highlight those for an applicant is.
Yes, so for us, we have had for a while an extenuating circumstances form, which is available from our website. And that really is the key way to tell us about any special circumstances. Those special circumstances, Karl, can include really difficult things that unfortunately every year we see examples of really, really sad family circumstances, perhaps a bereavement, a serious illness, either of the applicant or a family member. There can be family disruption as a result of divorce or other forms of instability at home. And of course, sometimes schools and colleges have very unexpected turbulence or instability that they need to tell us about. So the extenuating circumstances form is there either for an applicant or a parent or a school or college to tell us about those sorts of factors. And they do need to be things that have had a serious major impact on the applicant and their ability to study. um, we will then make sure that that is flagged on the applicant record, and that when we make any decisions about the applicant, whether it's a decision in terms of whether we can make an offer or whether it's a decision at confirmation in the summer when we're deciding whether we can confirm the place, we will give that application a second look or a third look or whatever is appropriate to try and keep it in play as long as possible. So it isn't always possible to take extenuating circumstances into account. It depends on the numbers dynamic for the particular course in question. But if we can take them into account, then we do. And our Deputy Head of Admissions is incredibly dedicated to this activity and spends an enormous amount of her time making sure that those cases are considered very, very carefully, because we really are aware from the volume of applications we receive, of these difficult things that do happen, unfortunately, every year to a portion of our applicants. So that form is the key way to tell us. Obviously, it's helpful to have that in the UCAS reference, but you've only got probably a few lines at most there, and there isn't the facility to upload evidence. And actually, sometimes a doctor's letter or something like that needs to come with the information, and schools, like to provide that, or the applicant does. So really that online form is the best approach there. But if you're going to use the online form, please also make sure that there is a couple of lines there in answer to question 2 on the new reference format, and then you've done everything that you can to support the applicant.
And that form is available on our admissions website. So you can, on the University of Exeter admissions site, you can upload details and send information there. Now, is there a time frame by which that form needs to be completed by?
So really, as soon as possible in relation to the circumstances in question. So as with all forms of special circumstances or the provision of evidence, it's best if it comes in as close as possible to what has actually happened. So if somebody's had a serious illness, tell us about that. Send us some evidence, on the medical side if possible, and do that as soon as is reasonably possible. We always ask for mitigating circumstances to be flagged, if possible, before results day. Often we get a flood of these kind of on or after A-level results day. And of course, it's much harder for us at that time because we will already have made most of our decisions by that point to take that information into account. And also it has greater weight if it's provided before you actually know the outcome of that candidate exams. So, if you feel that those circumstances have had an impact, get on and tell us that well in advance of the results. That would be the main steer.
That's great. Katherine, that's been fantastic, and it's a great insight into how we at the University of Exeter will be using the new sort of teacher references as they come through. We're producing further guidance in the shape of a document, and that will be available from our teachers' website. It'll also be sent out to key contacts in schools and colleges across the UK. But please, the alternative way to obtain the document is if you follow our Twitter account. At Discover Uni EXE, you'll be able to download the document from there too. So please do reach out or just get in touch with us, and we're more than happy to produce and provide these documents. As always, Katherine, thank you very much for your time,
You're
and
very welcome.
no doubt we'll be in touch again with another episode soon. Thank you.
Bye.